The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Thanks for joining us again today on Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. I'm broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thanks for joining me today. We've got so much to discuss, and I think it's going to be a very enlightening broadcast today. Now, please, before I go any further, share this broadcast with your friends and family. We really appreciate you doing that. It's so necessary to beating the YouTube suppression that we're still under to some degree. We're fighting back every day, and it's important. Wanted to share this with you here because, yeah, we're talking about Pierre Poilievre actually being a bullseye on two things today. On the F-35s and on immigration. Now, a lot of you have already commented, Pierre Poilievre is not serious about cutting mass immigration. All I can say is he says now he is. I hope he's being serious. And I've got to report that, not what he's thinking possibly, but what he's saying. I don't judge people on thought crimes. That I leave that to the Liberal government, people like Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney. They judge people on thought crimes. But I think Poilievre might be serious. Maybe it's out of political expediency. I don't deny that. But he's changing his tune. I know. I can't stand it when he shows up at these events, these Khalistani events, wearing all the headgear and everything else. It just turns my stomach because it's pandering. But he's right on with it. I'm going to play this clip first because somehow I missed this yesterday. I played most of this news conference where he's talking about lack of Liberal accountability. He's talking about the Auditor General's report where billions of dollars have been wasted on contracts the Liberals didn't even get services for. But he mentions the F-35 and the fact that the Conservative government could have bought it for 1/3 of the price that the Liberals are now saddled with. And they're still sitting on it. But I'll comment further on what the Conservatives did with the F-35 in a minute.
What do you make of the border security? What do you make of the border?
One thing I should say, she's absolutely right. We need to get the money back for taxpayers.
What do you make of the border security bill that was tabled last week, Bill C2? You haven't offered your views on it. Can you give us?
Well, we support a stronger border. We want severe limits on population growth to reverse the damage the Liberals did to our system. The population has been growing out of control. Our borders have been left wide open. This has caused the free flow of drugs, human trafficking, illegal migration, and much worse. And that is why we want a stronger border. We want to crack down on abuses in the immigration system, and we want to ensure that any frauds in the refugee system are reversed. Those are the things we're looking at. But we're also going to study the bill carefully to make sure that long-standing Canadians who are following the law are not having their rights and freedoms violated. Thank you.
Okay, good and bad news here. The good news is he's for severe limits on population growth. Like maybe not 1 million people in 1 year, maybe not changing the face of Canada, maybe not changing the character of Canada overnight. Good. I'm glad he's talking that way. Once again, I'm not sure how intent he is on doing it. I'm not sure how much conviction he has. A lot of you are commenting on that today. You don't know either. We do know from the past he has not exactly been committed to cutting mass migration. He talks about it sometimes, but his actions sometimes betray that. But what he's saying here about Bill C2, he's finally commented on Bill C2, Stronger Borders Bill. This is the one that's going to take away your right to not have your mail opened by the RCMP or Canada Post without a warrant. That's going to introduce mass surveillance of the internet, of your text messages, of email messages. That's going to introduce a cashless society, or at least on the way to a cashless society and a digital currency, because it's going to ban transactions in cash above $10,000. That's the poison pill in this bill. Poilievre did not even talk about it. We're going to study this bill a little closer. Why is he so afraid to condemn the Liberal government for mass surveillance? What is going on here? And I will say it again and again. I don't care if there's people out there saying, don't you dare criticize Pierre Poilievre because he is a perfect human being. Don't ever think a politician is a perfect human being. They're not infallible. They make mistakes. They listen to the wrong policy advisors. They listen to the wrong communications people, and they say stupid things sometimes. Poilievre needs to condemn this bill. You want stronger borders? Do it without pretending you're going after money laundering and organized crime by opening everybody's mail, by doing mass surveillance of the internet, because it's going to affect what I do. It's going to affect what you do. And Pierre Poilievre doesn't want to get this. We're going to study this bill a little further, then he walks away. No, we're not going to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it because somebody out there might think I'm not for stronger borders. And by the way, that's conspiracy stuff, isn't it? To think that mass surveillance is going to happen? To think that Mark Carney is really in the pocket of the World Economic Forum? Isn't that conspiratorial? No, it's fact. He is. And if you want to know what the World Economic Forum is up to, just look at their website. It's all there for anyone to see. We're not making this up about eating insects, living in 15-minute cities, owning nothing and being happy with that. It's all on their website. And Mark Carney is an acolyte of the World Economic Forum. He's a disciple of the United Nations. He was the UN Goodwill Ambassador for the Environment. And that's what Mark Carney is all about. I'm getting tired of saying it, but it's true. Now, here's somebody, Table Salt posted this yesterday in X. In 2010, Stephen Harper negotiated the purchase of 65 F-35. Actually, it's I don't know why he's calling Lightning II fighter jets for $9 million. It's actually the Joint Strike Fighter is what it's called. Trudeau canceled this deal and then bought 88 of the same F-35 fighter jets for $277 billion. These people are morons. Well, you're right about that. These people are morons. However, folk, why didn't Stephen Harper buy them? Why didn't Stephen Harper buy the F-35s when he had the chance, when he was prime minister in 2015? Why didn't he buy them? He put it off. He put it off. And he was afraid to spend money on national defense because he wanted to keep the spending down in an election year. So, of course, Trudeau canceled them. But then Trudeau realized, hey, I can't cancel them. There's no other options. And I've got to do something because the F-18s are about to fall out of the sky. They've been in the air too long, like 40 years. So, yeah, there was a change of heart from Justin Trudeau. I remember when then Defense Minister Anita Anand talked about how great the F-35 was, how wonderful the Royal Canadian Air Force was, and we needed to give them the best to patrol 3 coasts and to ward off enemy threats. Now, but, Pierre Poilievre is criticizing the Liberals' mismanagement, the Liberal boondoggle, but I don't know if he's even endorsing the purchase of the F-35 yet. And he certainly doesn't right here. He needs to do that.
But we want more money for defense, want to rebuild our armed forces. The other thing we want to focus on is value for money. So let me give you, here we have the report on the fighter jets. There we go. Oh, you got a second one, just in case. Just in case I want to read it twice, he's got a second copy. But here you are with this report. If you have another 10 or 15 boondoggles like this, you can probably hit the 5%. So the question we have to ask ourselves, is the goal to push out as much money as possible, or is the goal to have the best equipped, the best trained, and the best quality of life for our military? And I think it's the latter.
Sur les F-35, est-ce qu'on les abandonne? Vous n'avez pas répondu. Est-ce qu'on abandonne les F-35?
This is the former chair, and he deserves some credit for bringing this to light.
Look, I'll just say I'm looking forward to the committee sitting as soon as possible once it's reconstituted later this week. As you know, we brought to light a lot of the findings around ArriveCAN. I think the committee work resulted in the government promising to get money back. We want to see how they've done on that. Similarly, I think it initiated a number of the police investigations. We'd like updates on that. We have more work to do on the Green Slush Fund, and today's reports from the auditor give us more work to do going ahead as well. And odds had our Treasury Board critic as well, Stephanie Kuzi.
Thank you. The Auditor General made it very clear that the rules are clear, and yet the Liberals seem to be incapable of following the rules. And
then you've got F-35s. Liberal mismanagement of the process has now driven up costs by 50%, or $9 billion. The infrastructure delays are going to mean we need 2 fighter squadrons slated for completion in 2031, more than 3 years late, forcing extra spending on interim facilities. They haven't recruited enough pilots to fill the gap. They've got weak project management, risk management, and coordination plans remain incomplete and slow. And the bottom line is that rising costs, construction delays, staffing gaps, weak oversight threaten the ongoing introduction of the fighter jets. And who was responsible for that? Well, Anita Anand was one of the defense ministers who helped bring about this boondoggle. She has been promoted in this government. So in all of these cases, you have promotions for those who caused the problem. Now,
I hate to say it, but Stephen Harper is also responsible for the problem because he didn't buy them. Yeah, he negotiated a contract which he never signed. The federal government did not follow through on its promise to buy the F-35s. This is such a boondoggle. This is such a Canadian tragedy, but it's just another Canadian defense tragedy in a long list of them. And this is the story of Canadian military acquisition projects, capital acquisition projects. We wait so long by the time we actually purchase the aircraft and see delivery of the aircraft, which takes another 2 to 3 years. Guess what happens? It's almost obsolete by that time because the United States is on to the next generation fighter. I've said yesterday, and I'll say it again, the United States has been flying this thing for 10 years. The Royal Australian Air Force and the Royal Air Force in the UK have been flying it for almost 10 years. Canada has been sitting on its, sorry to say it, on its fat ass and doing nothing except watching the process. We started expressing interest in the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter in the early days of the Jean Chrétien government. That's how long this goes back. We were part of the planning process for this jet. We were committed to buying the final product. We still haven't got it. Now we're under a review process by the Carney government. It's obscene. The F-18s, we now fly, half of them are not operational. And guess what? We don't even have the pilots to fly them. These jets were delivered in 1982. And guess who was still prime minister then? Pierre Trudeau actually bought the F-18s because it was just military crisis time and he had no other option. So he said, okay, we'll buy them. How long ago was that? Well, you do your math, do your arithmetic. 1982, it's now 2025. Holy crap, that's 43 years we've been flying these aircraft. Do you think it's time to get a replacement? Are we a serious military or not? Well, no, we're not half the time. But let's look at Mark Carney. You know what drives me crazy about this is that they all talk a good talk about wanting to support our men and women in uniform, about wanting to support the military. Oh, we just love our military. Conservatives generally are better on national defense, at least since Pierre Trudeau. Actually, and before Pierre Trudeau, the Liberals were better on national defense than the Conservatives were, actually. But since then, of course, the Liberals have been very, very anti-defense. But the Conservatives like to say they're so much better for national defense, except when it comes to actually buying the equipment. They did buy substantial equipment for the Army and the Air Force during the Harper years, but they reneged on their promise to buy the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35. And that was a crucial and very historical mistake. But you know what drives me crazy is when these guys, these politicians, force military members to stand behind them when they make political announcements. It's disgusting. So here's Mark Carney with his chief of defense staff, who I just shake my head. This is clearly a DEI hire, and his minister of national defense, who hasn't really got a clue in hell about military matters, David McGuinty. And here he is standing in front of a bunch of military people who were ordered to stand there looking like they're 100% behind Mark Carney. And listen to Mark Carney describe what he's going to do with $9.3 billion of extra defense money. He doesn't know. He's already said it's going to go, and we'll get to that in a minute. It's going to go to rearming Europe. Listen to this.
Hello, Prime Minister. Nathaniel Dove with Global News. You said during the campaign with regards to national defense, you don't start with a percentage of GDP or what can be an arbitrary figure when it comes to national defense. Can you explain why you changed your position so that now we are hitting 2% much faster than you originally said?
Well, actually, it is the same position. It's looking at all of the elements on the ground, starting with the very basic elements of the foundations of the Canadian Forces. Pay, the lodging, munitions. I'm being simple, but I could give you a very large.
When Mark Carney starts to stutter, much like Justin Trudeau, it's because he's either lying or he doesn't have a clue in hell what he's talking about. Probably both in this case. But here he is trying to explain what he's going to do with the money, and he doesn't know.
Just the day in, day out experience, both of the individuals, the support they have, the support our veterans have, but as well the equipment that they have on in protecting us on the battlefield. We see the strains. For example, with respect to the relatively limited operational readiness of some of our aircraft broadly speaking, with respect to all that's being called on our military right now, including with the fires. And I want to full credit to the two individuals and the people they represent behind me for the full support they have given in massive evacuations and timely evacuations working with the provinces. But we need to build up that capacity, and seeing that, knowing that, and knowing we can act on it makes sense to act now. And then the second thing is the scale of the what I would call the enhancing our military capabilities across cyber, AI, critical minerals, other.
Holy hell. Are you listening to this? Enhancing our military capabilities above and beyond AI? What the hell is he talking about? Artificial intelligence has somehow got something to do with this increased defense budget? And critical minerals? What is that? What is he talking about? Donald Trump just announced this morning that he's going to get all of his critical minerals from China now, after he said he's going to get them from Ukraine. He's never even considered getting critical minerals from Canada. So what is Mark Carney talking about? What does the military have to do with critical minerals? This man is so muddled in his head, so lacking comprehension about what a military is actually supposed to do, that he doesn't make any sense in what he says.
Elements of that. There is an immediate need or immediate opportunity now. It happens that puts us in a position where we're not just at 2, we're above 2, probably rounded to 2.1% of GDP, okay, for what it's worth. Last thing, if I can say, is that I did make the point about, within the context of a broader negotiation within NATO, about longer-term targets, and that's something that's under discussion, is that we're going to be guided by what's necessary. Again, we're going to keep the same principle, not to satisfy, all due respect to them, NATO accountants, some magic number. It is about the results.
He managed to drone on for, 2 or 3 minutes there without ever coming near to answering the question, because none of it makes any sense. He's going to use military spending to fight forest fires? Wildfires, which of course he attributes all to climate change. He's going to use the military to protect our critical minerals and AI. I don't know what in the hell he's talking. Excuse my language. I shouldn't be saying that, but I'm sorry. This is nonsense. It's balderdash. Interestingly enough, so Mark Carney's talking about 2% of the GDP, right? He talked about that this week. He promised by the end of the fiscal year, we are going to be spending 2% of our GDP on the military. What does that amount to in real cash? Well, it comes to $9.3 billion more in defense spending. Sounds like a great thing. I am an ex-military member, a former officer in the Canadian Air Force, Royal Canadian Air Force now, thank God, as it was rebranded. I've always loved the military. My father was in the military. I've had so many good friends in the military, some of whom are still in the military. So I always support defense spending if it's used in the right way. So Carney's talking about $9.3 billion more for national defense. Here he is talking about $200 billion more to rearm Europe. Listen to this. It's hard to believe. Nobody is talking about this. Why? Mark Carney wants to rearm Europe so they can what? Fight a war with Russia and we can get into a nuclear confrontation. A nuclear holocaust is what it'll be. Is that what he's up to? Because Keir Starmer, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, is a madman who constantly is giving missiles to Ukraine so they can target Russian sites. Just a couple of weeks ago, they came that close to hitting a nuclear stockpile in Russia, which would have ignited a nuclear war between Russia and NATO. And guess what? We're a member of NATO, so we would be there too. Keir Starmer has talked about getting ready for a war with Russia. Keir Starmer is such an idiot. He's got more admirals than battleships in the Royal Navy. He has more horses than tanks in the British Army. And he's talking about fighting Russia. The same with President Emmanuel Macron from France. He's talking about invading Russia, fighting the Russians over the war in Ukraine. France can't defend its own borders. France is a military joke. But here's Mark Carney being precisely honest about where he wants to spend your money. He wants to rearm Europe. And Europe, of course, is the place where 2 world wars have already started. They started in Europe and they spread to the whole world. And Mark Carney wants to rearm the continent so they can get into another war?
We're actively seeking to strengthen transatlantic security, particularly by becoming a participant in Rearm Europe. This will help diversify our military suppliers with reliable European partners and integrate the Canadian defence industry as full participants in 150 billion euros of Europe's rearmament program. To these ends, the Canada-EU summit later this month will be more important than ever. And Canada will arrive at this summit with a plan to lead, with new investments to build our strength in service of our values. This will include our support for a new NATO defense industrial pledge, which will be negotiated at the NATO summit. The Defense Industrial Pledge encompasses both assets and infrastructure that support our defense goals. Canada is confident that our economic strategy and our many strategic resources, from critical minerals to cyber, will make major contributions to NATO security. We will support tangible commitments from our allies to provide NATO with the necessary resolve to deter aggression and protect against all adversaries in all domains. Our fundamental goal in all of this is to protect Canadians, not to satisfy NATO accountants.
No, your fundamental goal is to defend Europe, to rearm Europe, to intensify the potential for NATO to start a nuclear war. That is your intent, Mark Carney. This has nothing to do with securing Canada's borders. This has nothing to do with securing Canada's national defense. This has nothing to do with helping out the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. This has everything to do with Mark Carney's friends in Europe. $200 billion? He wants a blank check to the Europeans. That's what Mark Carney is all about. And I'll say again, please share this broadcast, this channel with your friends and family, because once again, YouTube has got its thumb on this broadcast, and believe me, I'm getting fed up. But I'm fighting back. Now, Mark Carney showed his woke side again yesterday with the shall we say, the infamous rising of the pride flag in front of Parliament Hill. I'll have some comments about this when this is over.
You know, our country, like the flag, is a mosaic. We're all different. We all have our distinctions. We're all Canadian. And one of our strengths of Canada is recognizing that people can be who they want to be. They can love whom they want to love. They can live where they want to live.
Okay, Mark Carney, do you really mean that? What if I'm a 50-year-old male and I want to love a 12-year-old? Is that allowed? Is that okay? Does that meet your standards? Sorry, that's against the law. So it means nothing. This is balderdash. If you happen to be LGBT, you're equal under the law. You have been for a long time. This is not about equality. I believe in equality under the law. I don't judge people by their lifestyles, unless, of course, that lifestyle is against the law. But I'm live and let live. I'm a libertarian that way. I disagree with their lifestyle, but I'm not going to try to punish them for it. Similarly, don't promote it at taxpayer expense, and don't pretend that somehow there's inequality for homosexuals in this country, or gays and lesbians, if you will. This is pandering increasingly to a wider and wider swath of deviancy, because now the gay pride flag includes people who commit SA against children. And I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to promote any of these lifestyles. I don't want my tax dollars going towards them, which they are. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions of your tax dollars are going to promote LGBTQ. And I can't remember the rest of it, this alphabet soup distinction that includes just about everybody that's not heterosexual now. So Carney is just mouthing BS, balderdash, hogwash.
The federal government, on whose seat we are the defender of those rights. We are the defender of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. When we stand up for all the rights of all our fellow Canadians, we strengthen our own. In a time where, unfortunately, around the world, there's a backlash struggling against the progress that has been made. In this time, Canada will always stand up for the vulnerable and for the equal rights that we cherish. Yes, we can take pride in how far we've come, but we should also recognize that there is much more to do. Far too many Canadians continue to face hatred and discrimination because of just who they are and whom they love. And that's why Canada's new government is supporting Fierté Canada Pride, to ensure and help have successful and safe Pride celebrations across this land. Yeah.
What happens at these Pride celebrations across this land? Incidents of men walking around either half nude or completely nude and displaying their private parts in public. This is unacceptable. Why is the government paying for safety at these events? They're quite safe because the police won't intervene. The police will do nothing. They will allow this indecent exposure to continue because it's politically correct and expedient for them to allow it. This has nothing to do with equality. There's already equality. There's not much more work to do at all. And when he talks about, oh, there's backlash, he's referring to the fact that President Donald Trump had the absolute courage to say the United States government only recognizes two sexes, male and female, not 101. So good for Donald Trump. Bad for Mark Carney. We need to roll back this, not complete the work. There's no work to complete. It's gone way overboard now. And I'll keep saying that. I don't really care who objects to that. We need everybody to be equal under the law. No special status, no special rights, no promotion for somebody's lifestyle, no tax dollars devoted for that promotion. This has gone way beyond tolerance. This has gone way beyond acceptance. This is direct promotion. And I won't have it. And I know a lot of you won't either. Just get out of our lives. Poilievre used to know the right word about this. He used to say, my government will be a mind your own business government. Get out of our lives. Stop telling us how to live. Stop telling us what sexuality we should embrace. Leave us alone. Let us all be equal under the law. And let's just move forward as Canadians, unhyphenated. That's my final word on this. But of course, we need to keep talking about it. Here's one of my favorite MPs, Jamil Javani, in the House of Commons question period yesterday, giving hell to one of the most incompetent ministers in the Carney government.
Oshawa North.
Mr. Speaker, Liberals have spent over $300 million on a housing program, claiming they would build 4,000 units. In 7 years, they built 309. To put it bluntly, that's not close at all. They've missed the mark by 93%. So the question I have for the Prime Minister is, how can he continue to have the minister responsible for this failure in his cabinet? And how can he promote that failed minister to now be our Minister of Justice?
Great question. The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We have a great opportunity here to build housing, and when you look at the pathetic performance of Housing Minister Pierre Poilievre, who delivered six affordable housing units. 6.
Why don't we look at the pathetic record of an idiot named Gregor Robertson, who was the mayor of Vancouver for 10 years and drove up the price of houses by double? Why don't we talk about this incompetent mayor of Vancouver, who for over 10 years made Vancouver the most expensive city to live in North America, more expensive than Los Angeles, New York, or San Francisco? Why don't we talk about the fact that Gregor Robertson was a crashing failure at housing in Vancouver when he was mayor? So why should we expect this guy to be any different now that Mark Carney has appointed him as his Minister of Housing? Have you ever asked yourself why Mark Carney keeps putting people like this in charge of portfolios? Portfolios that they are completely unqualified to address. It's because Mark Carney likes unqualified cabinet ministers. He likes people like Gregor Robertson running housing, because Mark Carney is going to be his own cabinet, his own government. It's all about Mark Carney.
1 year.
That's a great point.
And 0 in the city of Vancouver, where I was serving.
Yeah,
0.
that's right.
That's a record that is deplorable. And that's a record that this government will never repeat. We are focused on building big.
Yeah.
The Honourable.
Yeah, incredible gall, incredible hypocrisy from this housing minister. Now I'm going to do a brief ad here for my store, and when I come back, a little clip on buyer remorse over Mark Carney. Yes, please visit the store. We've got some great material, and I'm going to finish the broadcast with some of that great material on there. This just came in today in the mail. There we go. This just came in literally an hour ago. I'm just putting it on to show you. You too can have one of these. And of course, we've got the cups. We've got two sizes of these. We got the large mug, and we got the smaller mug. And I encourage you to have a look at the store. You can find some of the select merchandise at the bottom of our description today. This is really good stuff. I wanted to show you this clip though before we go for the day, and I'm probably going to come back this afternoon or early this evening at 6 o'clock. It's going to be a busy day, but I wanted you guys to see this. This is Stephen LeDrew, the former president of the Liberal Party. He doesn't like Mark Carney any more than he likes Justin Trudeau. Let's watch.
I want to know what's going to be happening in another few weeks. Stay tuned, because Andrew Enns here. He's the vice president of Leger Polling. And if you also want to know, you have to contribute. I'm being reminded right now. So keep us on the air. We don't charge an awful lot, but every penny really, really counts. So since the election, Andrew, you were so busy during the election. Since then, do you think Canadians are pretty satisfied with the election results, or is there a lot of discontent aside from Alberta?
Yeah. Well, okay, that's another topic. Look, so, we asked a question right after we asked a survey right after the election, and 90% of Canadians were happy with their vote, happy with the decision. Are they satisfied with the result? Pretty decidedly mixed, much like the way the results showed up. 55% said they were satisfied, about 40% dissatisfied. So,
we're Canadian though, so I mean, even the dissatisfied aren't saying we're going to go and burn down, Ottawa.
No, we asked the question: do they trust the results? Do they respect the results? Over 60%, said that they did. I mean, I'd like to see that number higher, quite frankly, in terms of the trust in the actually. But since then, we've had some really close races, like one vote races. No one's coining the big steal, or there's protests. So I think, all in all, I think the election's done. I think there's a view. Carney's got a shot. See what happens.
Yeah, we're being Canadian and say, okay, you know what? Let's just see what happens. Now, what we did touch on, Albert.
40% dissatisfied, and it's only been a couple of weeks. That number is going to explode in the next weeks and months as Canadians finally discover how authoritarian, how dangerous, how toxic Mark Carney is for your freedom and mine. I'm going to say this again, folks. We need to hear Pierre Poilievre condemn Bill C-2, the Stronger Borders Bill. Not because it talks about stronger borders, but because it talks about mass surveillance, and it's a clear and present danger to our freedom. It's a clear and present danger to everything that makes us Canadian. If we can even talk about that being a phenomena or a reality anymore. I don't know if we can, folks. I don't know how far we are from losing our freedom. I know we're close. I know we're at the precipice of an economic disaster, and we're on the precipice of a political disaster as the Carney government encroaches upon our liberties and our freedom. It's up to you and I to speak out against it, to persevere in the fight for freedom, to persevere in the fight against evil. I was on Neil Oliver's show yesterday, and it's on tonight. Don't miss Neil Oliver's interview with me, because he asked me, who does Mark Carney serve? And I said, well, Mark Carney serves himself. I said, I would actually say, he might be serving the devil, but he certainly serves mammon. And you know what the Bible says? You cannot serve God and mammon. Mammon meaning money. And that's Mark Carney's God. Keep the fight up, folks. Keep fighting for freedom. Keep fighting for everything we believe in as Canadians, because this isn't over yet. As long as we live and breathe, as long as we can continue to fight, it's not over. And we're going to keep fighting here on Stand on Guard. Keep pushing these numbers up every day. Share this station, this show with your friends and family. Let's move the audience upward. Subscribe today if you haven't. Resubscribe if you must. Let's make this a success. Thank you for watching. God bless this country, because it's still there. Godspeed to all of you who are watching today. And I will be back again tomorrow. This has been David Krayden, broadcasting live.